What does ISTP think of INFJ? But before I can answer, please consider subscribing to the channel so Kevin Spacey can continue to live his life as a gay man and fulfill his ultimate alibi as Frank Underwood. And hit the alert bell so you can be notified when I go live. That being said, what's up, Eco Hackers? This is C.S. Joseph, and I'm here to answer your questions. C.S. Joseph Responds style for all things Jungian analytical psychology or the four sides of the mind. And the source of today's question is Quora, because I am on a severe Quora kick right now, and I got a bunch more on my spreadsheet to get through. And then eventually I'm going to get to the huge pile of notifications that I have with my Quora account and actually answer your questions directly, in so much, or not so much just me choosing questions I want to answer. I'm going to be getting to your questions, but that'll happen one day in the future. But enough of that, and on to the question. Dana Haley. Alright, I imagine an ISTP would think an INFJ is way too caught up in people's feelings. Yeah, maybe. They would see them as very caring, genuine, and nice, like most of the world sees INFJs. No. Are you an INFP? No. That's not how they would see them. They wouldn't like being put into a box by your psychological dismantling. I mean, that's how an ISTP would react, but not an INFJ. They would challenge you on that. They might be annoyed that all your thoughts are centered around people rather than things or tactile stuff like they see as important or are interested in, such as war history. War history isn't really an INFJ topic. What? Excuse me while I spit out as many stereotypes as I possibly can within one paragraph. An INFJ would prefer to see a romantic comedy than a war movie and find no fascination of any kind of killing machine strategy. An ISTP would probably see the INFJ as weaker than themselves, therefore easily manipulated. Oof, that's like the only true statement that you stated this entire time. Though there are many ISTPs in this world, in my experience, these are the types who are most likely to be narcissists, sociopaths, and psychopaths. Oh, nice little statement of dark triad. Too bad statistically women are more attracted to men who exhibit dark triad traits than men who do not. I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, alpha seed versus beta need. Let's be straight. Okay, manipulation is just another tool that they're able to hone and refine to use their advantage. Okay, that may be kind of true because when you consider people like Jeff Lowe, who is an ISTP, and he totally manipulated Joe Exotic out of that zoo. If you want to learn more about that, you can check out the documentary on the Tiger King on Netflix for that. Again, not all ISTPs will do this or are interested in manipulated people. Oh, I'm glad you decided to give a disclaimer at that moment. Just a few. Most healthy ISTPs just very much enjoy their craft or mechanical trade or sport and focusing on that. Yes, in fact, I'd say that's probably the majority of, and based on that, I would imagine that there's no reason to mention anything else that you mentioned. Why do you do this? I don't know. They are men's men. Yes, they are. ISTPs are the second, they're pretty alpha. I'd say they're like the third most alpha of all the types, second to the ENT, or third to the ENTJ, and first, and then the most alpha is the ESTP man. And the women are tomboys, usually. Fair. They may walk all over the sensitive INFJ and give little value to their ideas. True. Probably not a great match, though they could both stand to learn a lot from each other. Very true. Well done. That was actually good. Oh, and this person is a musician, artist, author, and INTJ. Okay, I guess that makes sense given all of these stereotypes within these statements. That's not to say that I don't use stereotypes, which I do consistently, but like I try to make sure my stereotypes are a lot more rational instead of just like run-of-the-mill things that you randomly pick up on the INTJ forums, which this person obviously got their information from. But let's continue from there. Jeremiah P. will just say, software developer in blockchain 2019 to present. I'll answer this from the perspective of an ISTP who has told me what he thinks of me. I use his words because it'll help hit home better. You and I kind of have a similar mindset. I just use more logic than you. You use your own logic. Okay, thank you, TE Nemesis. Do you even know what you're doing? That's true. Don't forget to drink water and eat food. It's good for you. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be more like you when I get older. Yeah, you need to make smarter decisions, man. Get it together. You're too nice. When playing table tennis, you always get the weirdest saves. I never thought you could even go for that. I don't even know how you do it, man. Me and you have the kind of same view on things. You think like me, but you don't say it. These are a few things that I've gotten from the ISTP, and a lot of it makes sense functionally. INFJ has NIFE-TISE, ISTP has TISE and IFE. So we share all the same functions but in a different order. So it makes sense that they would get each other in a weird way. They're like a practical version of an INFJ. An INFJ is like in the clouds version of the ISTP. We may think about things like them but don't act it out. ISTP has an inner epistemology of the INFJ. The thing is, they can't help but do the practical thing in the here and now. This is excellent, and 79 upvotes for that. There's really nothing less to say here, so let's get into the C.S. Joseph response to this particular question. So how do, or what does an ISTP think of an INFJ? Quite frankly, I'll just be direct about it. ISTPs think INFJs are weak sauce. Straight up. Like, seriously, that's the number one criticism that you're ever going to get as an INFJ from an ISTP. It's SE parent basically looking at the poor performance of extroverted sensing inferior by using their extroverted thinking nemesis to compare themselves, their own TI hero, their own SE parent performance, and they're also seeing the really, really, really weak introverted sensing demon, and they're like, wow, INFJs, you don't even take care of yourselves. Wow, do you have any self-discipline whatsoever? Because remember, ISTPs are built to be in relationships with introverted sensors, especially SJ types with SE parent or SI parent and SI hero. So they're often projecting that on other people, and this is called cognitive projection. So an ISTP oftentimes projects ESTJ onto other people, and usually an ISTP, because they're so narrow sometimes, they're anti-child, and they have a hard time seeing past their own nose. It's really frustrating when ISTPs do this, because if it's not right in front of them, it's not real, right? They end up judging INFJs in this way, and they end up comparing their own performance, comparing everything about them to the INFJ. Of course, the INFJ, in response to that, just says, well, you just don't care about people. But the ISTP is like, well, I don't care. You're right. I don't care about people, nor am I going to care about people, because my FI demon just doesn't give a damn. But then the ISTP just tells the INFJ in response, oh, hey, by the way, your SI demon is so low and you lack any form of endurance, you lack discipline whatsoever, you lack reliability. Exactly how do you perform? Like, are you even human? Are you just a machine who just cares about feelings, and feelings don't really matter that much? Because I don't care about your feelings, because what you value is way too high for the rest of humanity to go after, because your feelings are completely unrealistic. So the ISTP, when they're looking at an INFJ, sees the INFJ as a complete unrealistic human being who is not only impractical, but incapable of performing well. And only if the INFJ sticks around with the ISTP, the INFJ can go extroverted sensing aspirational and prove the ISTP incorrectly, which is what we just saw an example of on Quora a few minutes ago, where they're talking about doing like table tennis, and the INFJ was able to make that shot that the ISTP didn't even really see coming because of his expert intuition trickster. And this really frustrates INFJs over and over again, because no matter how many times the INFJ proves themselves to the ISTP, well, guess what? The ISTP is going to later forget that the INFJ proved themselves to the ISTP anyway, and continue on judging the INFJ as weak sauce anyway. Which basically means it doesn't matter what the INFJ does, the ISTP is still going to see them as weak sauce. And then the INFJ is going to feel bad, and they're going to get super bitter about it with their SI demon, and eventually actually seek out revenge or some kind of justice against the ISTP later, to the point where every opportunity that they will have, they will always one-up the ISTP and expose the ISTP, even though the ISTP is very tactical and not very strategic, unlike the INFJ, which is basically mostly strategic with a little bit of tactics. The ISTP would win in any situation in that case, because it's like they can just sidestep whatever the INFJ actually throws at them at that point, because that anti-child's always going to be able to wiggle their way out. You know what I'm saying? So, and it's all because the ISTP is like, wow, why are you not an ESTJ? Because that's what ISTPs do to most people. It's called cognitive projection. Cognitive projection is when you project your golden pair onto other people. It's because your mind is naturally seeking out your golden pair seeking out people who are compatible with you. So for an ISTP, that would be philosopher types. So the ISTP projects philosopher types onto other people, hoping to find philosophers with which they can have relationships or friendships with, etc., so they can jive and have, a better life. And everyone naturally projects the golden quadra that they are, compatible with the most, basically, and they project that on other people, and then they treat other people that way. But if people don't respond in the way that that a philosopher was, the INFJ is not going to respond as a philosopher, the ISTP gets upset. And then because it's like, wow, you're not meeting my expectations of what I'm looking for in a human being, so I'm just going to label you as someone who's weak sauce because my SE parent is obviously better than your SE inferior. So, and then the INFJ uses SE aspirational and proves the ISTP wrong, but then the ISTP forgets about that in the first place and continues to treat them like weak sauce anyway. It's really frustrating. Over time, this causes the INFJ and the ISTP to have a huge amount of hatred towards each other. In the same way that, like for example, in terms of season 12 playlist here on this YouTube channel, you can check out, social compatibility, etc. And while these two can learn from each other and can have a really big rivalry between each other, which can actually increase their skills and make them better over time, they can be extremely vicious to one another. It's like an ENTP with an ESFJ. As much as I don't like my polar opposite, the ISFJ, oftentimes, I learn and gain so much from ISFJs on a regular basis. However, it's ESFJs that absolutely bug me, and from my point of view, they're just lost. Oftentimes, I have that aspect, and there have been a few ESFJ coaching clients I've had who have been willing to listen to me, and they're amazing people. But then there's the ESFJs who just automatically judge me because they don't want to think that there might actually be bad people out there who might want to social engineer them and guilt them into doing things that they don't want to do. Well, it's no different between INFJ and ISTP. That same conflict exists. So yeah, bottom line, what does ISTP think of an INFJ? Well, INFJ is weak sauce, basically, and it doesn't matter how much the INFJ proves otherwise. The ISTP is just going to forget that proof and continue to judge them that way, predominantly. This is not 100% across all of the relationships, but I would say this is probably 8.5 to 9 out of 10 of the relationships, unless the ISTP or the INFJ has a severe amount of rapport with each other because they were basically raised together as small children and have known each other their entire lives, etc. So yeah, might want to pay attention to these types of relational dynamics. If you like your chance of your question being answered on this channel, post it on Quora and tag me, or leave it as a comment below. If you'd like a free copy of the Type Grid to assist you in typing yourself and others, please visit csjoseph.life/typegrid. Anyway, folks, all that being said, I'll see you guys tonight.